the name of our show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Large Glass. I'm Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly show where we bring you another artist to talk about right from the studio. How's everybody doing tonight?
How's it going?
It's good.
Good.
We had a great time at 100 in our tour.
We had a fantastic weekend.
It was, yeah. I mean, so many of you showed up to the open studios, and we thank you for that. And, we had a really fun time. The weather was perfect.
Oh,
the art we
gorgeous.
saw was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was a good time.
we had munchies, so it was all good.
Yeah, like we had trays of food.
Trays of food. Yes.
So let's see. Ben's here. Hi, Mom. Hi, Marsolis. I'm glad you're back. Thank you. There's Glenn
67.
Lavertu.
Hello.
Well, the RISD crowd's filing in for Paul tonight because, my slight RISD bias, I think if we were to look at the degrees of everybody we've had on the show, it might err on the side of that. I'm not saying it was intentional, but it might.
It might.
So
It
there's
might.
Shirley Perlinsky.
Yes.
And Audrey's with her.
Hello.
Carolyn Thau is here.
Yeah.
It's good to see all you guys. Well, I guess we should probably drink.
Yes.
La Prala is here. Hi, La Prala. Nice to see you.
Hello. Christian.
It's Christian.
Hi, Christian.
And Alan Wexler is here. Okay,
Hello.
the RISD crowd's filing
They
in.
are
Here we go.
filing
Hi,
in.
Alan. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to see Ellen. I bet Ellen's back there watching too. So let's see. Drinking?
Yeah. Drinking.
All right, so Paul gave me a task, and I was unable to fulfill the task, which is like a problem. But tonight, Paul wanted to drink the famous grouse, which is a scotch, and it's very hard to find.
Yes.
So Paul will be drinking famous grouse, but I will be drinking Glenmorangie La Santa, which is nice. This is it is a flavorful, nice scotch. So I'm going to pour myself a little dot of that. Dot. That's a Jim Osmond term. If you're watching,
true?
Jim, he might be out there working in the studio.
Yeah, we have Joseph Barbaccia. He says TNT.
TNT.
And Jamie
Yes, Ellen is
Foster.
also a RISD guy. Nice. Excellent.
And Jamie Foster's here too.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello.
Nice to see you. We got a good crowd.
Yeah.
Terry's going to be drinking from High Rail Brewery, which is our local brew pub right here in town. She's going to be drinking the Musket Rust.
That's right.
All 3.1% of it.
3.1%.
Terry could physically
I'll be
drink this whole can
coherent.
herself and still be fine.
Yes.
So here we go. It's barely. Look at that.
It's really hazy. I don't think I saw it before, but yeah, that's nice.
Joseph says Tyler guy here. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Nice. We got. What's that? Is that Tyler is Temple? Temple
I
in
think
the
I
house.
might have just a little bit more. Look, just a little bit more.
There,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank
I
you.
should have
That's much
filled
more
that.
generous.
I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm sorry.
Alrighty.
All right, so tonight is episode 88.
Yeah. Double eights.
Double eights. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let us know what you're drinking in the chat, everybody. Oh man, that's good. Mike Rader says, "Love the can." I know, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's cool,
It's
right?
it's like a growler, and it's really well carbonated. It really holds it in nicely. Every time you open it, it gives that little. John Park is here.
Yeah.
John, Jess, thank you so much for coming this weekend. It was so nice to see you guys. We had a great time with them. And there were a bunch of others of you that we got to see that weekend. We, of course, saw Shirley Perlinsky. Mm-hmm. We, of course, saw Mom
Yes.
and Audrey and Carolyn Thau and Memory Vessel.
Moped Vagrant.
So
That's right.
a lot of our crew was
Bill
here.
Daddy came. Yeah.
Bill Daddy was here.
A lot of cool people came.
Yeah. Joseph Barbaccia is having a soft and tasty Merlot. I like that.
Yeah.
Shirley's
that does
got
sound good.
margaritas and a Sauvignon Blanc. Not a good combination if you're the same person, but I know you're not. Boo Jazz is here with a classic Reka vodka martini with a twist of lemon. That sounds beautiful.
Ooh, that does sound yummy.
Yeah, that's nice. So, as far as the 100 and Art Tour goes, I wanted to point out a couple of things about that I think are really important. And, I realized, this year finally being hopefully on the tail end of the pandemic and things beginning to open up. I think the 100 in Art Tour really celebrated a victory this year in that there was a record number of artists on the tour, a number of which I didn't even realize were in Hunterdon County. So it was a real treat to discover some of these new people out here. So that was the first thing. The second thing, though, is that I feel like they're now potentially off to the races in terms of making this a really robust tour year after year. I like the notion of the divided county by, Saturday and Sunday, Western versus Eastern. I like this idea that there are larger venues like, the Art Yard and Whittemore and the Hunterdon Art Museum that all kind of host individual events during that. There's really a lot to do, and it's spread out in such a nice, even way that you don't get overwhelmed and you also don't get bored.
Yeah.
So, if you're in Hunterdon County and you're an artist, and I know there's some of you out there that were not on this tour this year, you've got to do this next year. I mean, it's such a great community. And for those of you like John and Jess Park, I guarantee you they're going to back me up on this. They made the trip out. They stayed for the weekend. They got to see a lot of the tour and relax.
Yeah.
It's worth the trip.
And it's beautiful out here in Hunterdon County. It's all country farms and
Covered bridges.
It's a dream. It's a visual dream.
What do we have? One covered bridge?
I think there's one left. So we got that
We got
going
one.
for us.
We got one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, but you should come out.
Definitely.
So, good times.
You were going to talk a little bit about the Instagram things that are going on. I just kind of wanted to catch people up on that.
Well, we're catching up. So this week we're going to restart the Name the Artist contest on Thursdays. So make sure that you look out for that. It's your chance to win a really cool limited edition pin.
Right. Get that pin.
Yep, and we're going to start posting birthdays again too, because we missed doing that. So kind of stay abreast of which artist has a birthday. I know we missed Frank Holiday's birthday yesterday. It was his birthday, so happy birthday, Frank.
Yep, Frank Holiday, our very own Frank Holiday.
Our very own Frank Holiday.
We own him now. He's ours. I feel like we had such a good time with him.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least, we're going to officially be naming or changing the name of the show from the large glass to the larger glass. And the reason, and that's not entirely true, but I got to say, given everything that's going on in the world, these large glasses are not enough. I feel like, I mean, I'm not going to get into too much right now, but
no, there's a lot of craziness right now.
And I just feel like, we need to have a larger glass.
Yeah. But it seems everywhere. Like everybody I talk to is going through something or,
And this is your therapy. Come in here and we're
come here Tuesday nights.
That's right.
Kick it back.
That's right. I agree.
Talk about art.
So if you're here and this is your first time or you have not followed us yet, please, please, please add us as a follow. So if you are on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. You'll get a notification every time we go live or we add a new video. If you're here on Twitch, if you do hit the subscribe button, you will notice that that costs money, which we're not opposed to you giving us. However, you can just follow the show, and that's free. So Twitch is free. But please follow us on either end. We've got a fantastic lineup both tonight and all the way out. So we'd love to have you along for that ride. So support us if you can. Tell a friend and bring them too.
Yeah.
Carolyn Thow's laughing at me. John Park's like a mega pint.
Yes.
Ben says, what if you are not from Hunterdon? Would they still show your work? No, they won't, unfortunately. Yeah. It's strictly based on a map.
Yes.
So sorry about that, Ben.
It's all part of the tour. Yeah.
You just got to move out here, Ben. That's what you got to do.
Get a studio, or at least a studio out here.
Yeah. That's all you need.
Yep.
So anything else for us to throw at the audience tonight?
No, I think that's it. Tomorrow's May the 4th.
Oh, yeah.
So just want to bring that back. We had Mike Rader on
we're
last
not
year.
in the Millennium Falcon.
We're
Falcon.
not. It's May the 3rd, but I just meant to say May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
Look back on episode, what's it, 45?
Oh, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's episode 45 when we had May the 4th episode. We were sporting some costume that night.
Yes.
All right, should we start talking about tonight's artist?
Yes, let's talk about tonight's artist.
I would love that because I can't wait to get him out here.
Yeah.
So.
Me too.
You're on.
All right. Well, tonight we have a special guest. He's an abstract painter who explores color, design, and depth in his paintings. New York-based artist Paul Corio was educated at Hunter College for his MFA, and he also has a BFA from RISD. His work has been featured both nationally and internationally in London and Paris-based galleries, both in solo and group exhibits. He has also been featured in numerous publications, including Art Critical, Hyperallergic, The New York Times, and many others like the self-published No Hassle at the Castle. He's also an educator and apparently a jazz musician.
You didn't know this?
I didn't know that.
Oh,
that's kind of cool.
I told you that.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Carry on.
Yes, but for everyone watching us tonight, please join us in giving a warm welcome to Paul Corio.
What's going on, Paul?
Nothing much, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
You know, I got to tell, I want to start this off. I know you always ask the first question, but I got to tell Paul something. And this is on an academic note. This is on a teaching note, because I forgot to tell you this earlier when you were in the green room hanging out waiting. I have two students, and I think this is a great way to lead off the show. I have two students that adore you, and they have you. And I believe they might be watching tonight. So, but I believe you know Lily and Maeve. And they speak,
of course.
They speak very
highly.
I hope
they're out there.
I do too.
Hi, Lily. Hi, Maeve.
I hope Lily and Maeve are here, but they speak very highly of you. And I just wanted to pass that along and set this off on a good vibe. It's a testament to, you know, how good of a teacher you are.
Professor Paulie.
Yes. So you got some famous grouse there?
Here it is now.
Aww,
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Toad.
So, you want to get us going?
Yes, we always start off with the same question for all of our artists. So Todd and I are pretty familiar with what type of work you do and your style, but some of the artists or some of the people tuning in tonight aren't as familiar. So usually we have the artists tell us or generally explain to us what it is that they do.
I make abstract paintings, pretty much always geometric, always governed by the sequential use of color. And that's the, you know, I use a lot of different motifs, but the thing that's consistent from work to work is this sort of disciplined color sequence. And I use that to create this backlit sense. I like a lot, sense of transparency. I use it as a method of articulating space. I do a lot of different things with it, but that particular approach to color, I think, is the glue from motif to motif.
I like the glue. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so we have a ton of images loaded, Paul, and I'm actually gonna just, rather than talking about each work individually, I will usually cycle through things slowly as we kind of talk more generally about your work. And if we need to stop on something or call something back, we can totally do that. The other thing I want to do is, if you're in the chat right now, I'd love to encourage you to ask questions of Paul, as those who are regular viewers know. Ask away, make comments. We'll throw them up there as needed. If you're new here, ask away. We will get to your questions. So, so Paul, how long have you been at this, man? Like, how long have you been making paintings, especially looking at the ones we see up here? Like, can you date these?
Yeah, these are older ones. These are probably, I think that one is from 08-ish. I consider my sort of grown-up body of work to begin in 2005. You know, my path in art has been not circuitous. I had a whole career in commercial art, and I'm a musician, and so on and so forth. My sort of current body of work, I date back to 05, and the thing that's on the screen now is one of the earlier pieces. I think it's around 08.
And besides the illustrative work that you were doing, did you paint abstractly before this, or is this kind of like a leap that you made that's like
it's what I wanted to do. I was doing it when I was an undergrad, painting. And you know, I knew I was going to come to New York, and I didn't want to come to New York and be another broke guy, another broke artist. And in the 1980s, I was at RISD in the 1980s, and there was a lot of really interesting things going on with illustration in the 1980s. Alan Kober and Henrik Drescher, Raw Magazine. It looked like art. So I thought, okay, well, I can do this. It's kind of, I can be an artist, but there's also more of a career path. And I had a whole career in illustration, and I did very well with it. But after just a few years, the the more money I made, the less interesting the work got. I was getting calls from all these business magazines, and I remember once I was doing a caricature of Arnold Schwarzenegger for Entertainment Weekly wearing a dress, and I looked down at this thing and I thought, is this who you meant to be? And the answer was definitely not. And then that's when I went back, and I got my master's at Hunter in painting, and became the painter that I wanted to be the first time around. So I had this whole other 10-year career before I started this.
Yeah.
My mature work begins right around the time I'm 40.
Gotcha. And so you've got a 10-year gap between undergrad and grad then, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, which I kind of think is actually very valuable. I feel like, putting that distance between those 2 degrees gives you an opportunity to take that second degree a little more seriously.
Yeah, being a grown-up student is really different than being a young student too. I mean, it's harder because, you have a life in place and you have responsibilities and you have bills, but you're just much more serious about it. I know, at least I was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I'm going to promise I'm not going to hog every question, but I wanted to lay some groundwork here that I thought might be really important. And so, I at some point I want to ask you some questions about music with the work, but at what point were you playing the drums or playing music in general? Like when did you begin that?
Well, I've been playing the drums since I was like 10, but in terms of playing live, when I was young, and in New York, I was playing in punk bands. I was playing at CB's and all those places. That was a lot of fun. And then I got serious about jazz around late 20s, right around the time I actually went to grad school. And then I actually had a 5-year period where I was really focused on jazz. When I finished Hunter in 2000, I abruptly quit painting because while I was there, I got very caught up in this idea about making a painting that had no external reference, the perfect abstraction that didn't refer to anything outside its own existence. And, there were obviously a lot of artists in the 20th century that pursued that and came to the conclusion that it's impossible. Every painting looks like something. You can't make a painting that exists wholly outside of human experience. Music, on the other hand, is perfectly abstract. So I was playing like really crazy, like abstract jazz at the time. And that was my idea. So if you're interested in the perfect abstraction, it doesn't have to be medium specific, it doesn't have to be a painting. You have access to a far greater level of abstraction with music. So I pursued that for about 5 years. And it's among the most miserable 5 years of my life. Like being a jazz musician makes being a fine artist look like a day at the beach. It's a hard way to go.
Yeah.
It's hard to get gigs and then also after I had been away from painting for a minute, so this is like 2000 to 2005, after I'd been away from painting for a minute, the idea that I needed to make a perfectly abstract painting, the sort of modernist ideal of something that didn't refer to anything outside its own existence seemed kind of not silly, but it just didn't seem like that big a deal. You know what I mean? It seemed a little quasi-Catholic too. My paintings, this purity thing.
Yeah.
And I saw no reason after a while why a painting shouldn't. You could have abstract motifs, but depict space in the old-fashioned, old master sense. I feel like I'm not going after this sort of Greenbergian optical space, whatever that is. I'm depicting the same ordinary three-dimensional space that we all exist in, but I'm filling it with novel color ideas and geometric motifs. It's also probably worth pausing on the geometry thing. I'm not especially devoted to geometry per se, or sacred geometry. I'm not a mathematician, but at Hunter, when I got really, really interested in color, there was this whole color mafia at Hunter College. I learned a lot from these teachers. But what you discover is if you want color to take the sort of front and center role, you have to place pretty careful limits on everything else. Color wants to be a sort of supporting player. It wants to be the, if you see a red Ferrari, you see Ferrari first before you see red. Red is just a surface quality of the Ferrari. If you want red to be the star of the show, you have to put pretty strict limits on everything else. And that's not just representation, even really energetic gestures tends to distract attention from color. Color wants to jump in the back seat. So I just found that if I wanted color to be the thing that you looked at, the way you present it had to be kind of bland, really. I mean, the painting that's on the screen right now is not an especially inventive motif, but it allows the color to really sing. You know, the color is the star of that show.
Sure, most definitely. And it seems to me that that's abstraction's real uphill battle, is trying to push down whatever it is that is recognizable, and like in the case of the Ferrari, so that it can allow another element of the form to rise to the surface or to sort of take front and center. There are a ton of questions coming in.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in.
And the first one I want to ask before we get too far off of it, I might not read these in order, but Boo Jazz, who is one of our regular listeners, he says, I have to ask this. Your 3 favorite jazz albums.
Let's see. That's hard. There's a lot. Okay. I'm going to put Monk's Dream on there for sure. Shape of Jazz to Come by Ornette Coleman.
Got that one.
And Moanin' by Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. But you know, if you had caught me an hour from now or asked me again tomorrow, it might be 3 different ones. Because there's no Mingus on that list. Like I left off Mingus Alum, and I also left off Blues and the Abstract Truth. But I'll stick to the first 3.
Oh yeah, Blues and the Abstract Truth is a must. And I got to admit, I'm glad there's some Ornette Coleman on there.
Yeah.
I'm glad of that. That makes sense too. Okay, so I'm going to just keep pulling through these. Let's ask another one.
Well, there's a lot of questions. I'm going to start towards the top here where Joseph Barbaccia says, Paul, is there a formula or particular method you have for determining color choices for your recent work?
It's usually dictated, well, as I say, I always lay out colors in sequence. The sequences vary. It is often has to do with color value. I go from dark to light a lot, but I also have sequences that I mix up that go from one particular hue to another, grayscales. But it's the work that's on the screen right now. You can see there are 3 different value groupings. The parts that descend are all a variety of colors, but they're all in a very dark value range. The horizontal bits that connect them are all in medium value colors, even though there's a broad variety of colors. And then the ground is all in light colors. And I think the other thing that's important to point out is whatever compositional and spatial organization I have in a lot of these works, particularly these works that are built out of triangles, it all has to do with the colors and the color values. Because if you were to make a line drawing of that painting or this painting, for example, all you'd see is a grid of triangles. The thing that gives it any kind of organization, any kind of understanding of space and foreground and background is about the placement of the colors.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to just kind of build off that for a second. Do you do mock-ups or do you do sketches to play with some of this idea of color and color theory? Like, because I'm guessing you just don't go for it. I'm guessing there's a lot of planning involved.
Nope, I just wing it.
Get the hell out of here.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
Well,
a lot of people ask me this question: do you work things out in Illustrator or Photoshop, and do you do drawings, a colored pencil? And the answer is no. I just wing it. I mean, what I do is when I have a new idea, because you know it's always going to look different on the canvas than it looks in your mind. I don't make studies, but I do make small paintings. You know what I mean? So if I have a new idea. And as a matter of fact, lately, for the last couple of years, my sort of test size has been 36 by 24. And that's kind of my go-to size. I have a new idea. Let's see how this goes. And if it goes well, then, okay, we'll try 42-30. And if that goes well, then let's try a 6-footer. But no, I just kind of get in there and wing it. I mean, I also, it's important to understand that I have, all my colors are pre-mixed. All the various sequences. So if you come to my studio, what you see is hundreds and hundreds of mason jars that have numbers on top. So, you know, I'm surrounded by these sequences of colors. And generally when I mix up a sequence, like the one on the screen now is a 17-step grayscale. I might have mixed up that sequence in order to make this group of paintings. But once I have them there, I'll think of 5 other things I can do with them. You know, yeah. So the same colors appear over a variety of different motifs. But it's just me going in there and kind of playing around and seeing what works, starting smallish, and then getting large. Then there's also, you find that some motifs top out at a certain size. Like some motifs look good at 36 by 24, and then you get it up to 6 feet and it's not so hot. So I'm cool with that too. There are small ideas and there are big ideas.
Gotcha. So John Park, one of our regular viewers who is really invested in music pretty heavily, has a music sort of influence question. He had a bunch of questions all in one, but I'm going to go straight to this one. He says, have you listened to the composer Morton Feldman, who was very influenced by rug patterns that he collected?
Oh, the answer to the first part is yes. I do know Morton Feldman. He was great friends with Guston, apparently. And I did not know, and I know he's a minimalist, early minimalist composer, but I didn't realize he was working from pattern-based composition, which is very interesting to me.
And there's another question.
As a matter of fact, if he could put in the chat which compositions they were, I'd be curious to listen to those.
Okay, great, and I'm sure he will. And he wants to know if you're influenced by patterns from particular cultures when you're laying these things out.
The short answer is no. The broader answer is I do like textiles a lot. Not of any particular era or region. I like pieced quilts, those G-span quilters. Mm-hmm. And there is one particular, it'll come around eventually. There is one particular motif that I found at the Metropolitan in a fragment of a mosaic floor from ancient Rome. It was from outside of Pompeii. And that was maybe the first time I actually lifted a motif from a historical source.
Oh, interesting. Can you describe it and I'll pull the slide?
Yeah, it's the one, how can I describe it? They have kind of tilted squares that are connected by diamonds, horizontal and vertical diamonds.
Tilted.
It actually has a name. I can't remember the name. Somebody told me that, it appears in ancient Rome. It appears in a lot of Baroque churches. That is the one. Yeah. And I use that in a variety of ways. The two tilted squares and then the horizontal and vertical diamonds. That's originally from an ancient Roman floor.
Huh. And again, I love what you said about how if you took all the color away and you just looked at the initial drawing, it's just the drawing of triangles in that earlier one. And now I'm starting to take these apart in my head, and I'm trying to sort of assess how the paint itself gives the dimensionality to these. And in some of them, it is so striking and full, right? And that's really beautiful to me. I love that.
I was really influenced by the Greenberg thing when I was in grad school, and he was very much wanted painting to be a lateral affair, two-dimensional, and he talked to the famous flatness.
Yeah.
But then I realized at some point that I wanted my magic window shadow box, the illusion of space, the same old illusion of space that you see in old master paintings, but applied to abstract motifs. And I don't see any real reason why you can't have both, personally.
Gotcha. John Park answers the question earlier about pattern. He goes, patterns in a chromatic field. He wasn't directly pattern based literally in his music, but a lot of his music is marked by turning a small idea around over and over and lots of space and slow.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's a good one. What else we got?
Well, he did have, do you want to hit some more of John's questions? Because he had like a whole bunch in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
And he had prefaced it by saying, I will line up a couple of questions. So does math figure into your designs? I think that one was
We got that one answered already, yep.
Are you influenced by patterns? Okay, so nope, we're good. We got you, John.
We got
it. Let's see. Mike Rader. I can see the illustration and music background in the far shadows of these paintings. And then he says, disregard, so never mind.
Alan Wexler's curious what kind of paint you're using.
There we go.
What medium are you using on these? Is this acrylic?
Yeah, acrylic on canvas. Sometimes on smaller works, I'll go all the way down to 12 by 12. Sometimes on really small pieces, I'll work on a panel because with a smaller work, you stand much closer to it, and the canvas texture can be a little distracting. But the overwhelming majority are acrylic on number 10 cotton duck.
Yeah, and Mike Rader's here, and he's got a great question. He's like, didn't Rothko nick from rug patterns? And then he says, Paul, do you conceive the colors you want to work with first or the frameworks?
Excellent question. And I would have to say that is probably the big shift from when I moved from illustration to abstract painting. not going from representation to abstraction, but more so starting with the color. So when I was making illustrations, you would begin with a drawing, and then I would make the pants blue and the grass green, and I felt like my color was really unimaginative. My drawings were always, I was draftsman from the time I was a small child. After I went through this intense color theory training at Hunter, I definitely begin with a color idea and then decide what motif would look good with the color idea. So it completely reverses the terms. I used to start with drawing and build the house and then paint the house. Now I start with the colors and figure out what the structure wants to be secondary. The color always leads the way.
I'm just plowing through a couple here. Jim Osmond is here. Jim Osmond in the house. Jim. Cheers.
Cheers.
And Alan, cheers.
And Alan.
Not that we don't toast all of you
John
and everybody, but I don't want to leave anybody out. But Jim, I hope you have a famous grouse. He asks, in your process, how often are you surprised with the outcome?
Ooh.
Almost always. And not always pleasantly surprised, I should add. It always looks different than you think it's going to look. And sometimes you're really surprised. So that's also, I think it's really important to make every idea, that pops into your head, because I have had ideas that I thought, okay, this is going to be my great masterpiece. Like this, in my mind, it looked magnificent. And then I made it and it was like, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. Then there were other things that I almost skipped because they seemed too simple, too stupid, that actually visually worked out real well. You never know. There are certain motifs I come back to over and over again that I have a greater idea of whether or not it's going to work. But even I'll have some unpleasant surprise. I had one very recently, like a motif that I've done many times over the years. And I made one that's like, this is really dull. Off the stretcher it goes, and then I just stretch a new piece of canvas and start again.
I love that.
So short answer, that's a long answer to a simple question. The answer is yes, always a surprise.
Yeah. Let's see. Ben Hagenbush says, Paul, is your mood more on the downside when you paint in grays and more on the upbeat when you're using brighter colors, or maybe that doesn't even apply? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
No?
I mean, maybe, but I don't. I find the grayscale thing not so much moody, but kind of, I find it very elegant, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That. It's like, it's like your best black dress. I'm interested in the one that's on the screen right now, because it seems to sort of get away from that intentionality behind dimension.
Yes, it does. When I was making those, it was more of an improv kind of thing. There's a general movement from dark to light, going from the top to the bottom, but then the compositional events, that little devil's tail at the bottom and those little cat's ears in the upper left, they were all improvised. And it's just, I think if I remember correctly, when I was doing these, I laid out the triangles, as I say, in a general movement from dark to light, going from the top to the bottom. And then I just started playing around and pulling shapes out. And, I also like this, and to go back to this notion of the spatial, that little tail at the bottom that moves from a sort of cool blue to a cad red medium. The fact that it's a shape and the fact that it's a shape that exists in front of a field, again, only has to do with the colors that I chose for the triangles. Once again, same thing I said before. If you did a line drawing of this, all you would see is interlocking triangles. You wouldn't see any space. You wouldn't see any compositional events. You wouldn't see anything.
So essentially, it's the choices of color after the fact that completely redefine that into a unique space.
Yeah, this one's a little different than a lot of the other ones too, because a lot of the other ones I have, to go back to that Roman tile pattern, the composition is pretty much taken care of before I begin. This is done in a much more improv-y way. I mean, not as improv-y as a gestural abstraction or something like that, but there's no predetermined schema. I just keep working on it until it looks good.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm curious about, like I said earlier, I wanted to ask you about music a little bit and how structure and improvisation in music sort of have parallel roles here. But is that something you can relate to? Or is
certainly with this painting, with the painting that's on the screen right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ask me about music. and it's definitely in there. I mean, it's part of who I am and has been since I was a child, and it's on. It's never not on in my studio, but every time I've tried to really sort of come up with one-to-one relationships. Okay, here's how playing, or rhythms. I play the drums and those particular patterns. I always kind of come up empty. I don't think they definitely affect one another, the work and the music, but I think I could get in trouble if I tried to make too much of a one-to-one analogy of exactly how that works.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't think the parallel was that direct, but I just wondered if it crept into your mind while you were working in the ways in which certain discoveries in the work may be reflected on discoveries you might make through improvisation in the music.
In a general way, yes, but I don't think I can get any more specific than that.
Right.
They're definitely both things like central aspects of who I am, and the central aspects of who you are always going to turn up in your work.
For sure. Joseph Castronova, who's a great viewer of ours, says, do you find yourself painting over colors, or do you try to work out the painting by adding others?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I think what he's saying is do you paint over existing colors when you feel like something's not working? Or do you make those corrections? And I say corrections, meaning do you try to balance things out by painting around that color?
Both. I do both of those things.
Yeah.
And particularly in a painting like this, there's some, as I said, that it's pretty much fixed from the beginning. I know what it's going to be. But in something like this, there's a lot of overpainting. And there's also a lot of, if I understand the question correctly, kind of framing as well. Like, I might have some dark, especially up there at the top. There's that sort of sequence just to the left of the center of those kind of fire colors. I think that there was a larger grouping of fire colors, and I put in the lighter colors on either side to kind of frame them out. So if I understand the question correctly, the answer is both. I do both things.
Gotcha. Okay, let's keep plowing along here. I don't have these in any particular order, but I do like this idea that we're just kind of moving about. So,
that's how I work too, by the way. That's not the wrong way to look at my work. I don't do the X series and then stop and then do the Y series and then stop and then do the Z series. I'm constantly coming up with new things and revisiting old things in a new way. My studio practice is this real mix of rigor and restlessness. And there's something else, with motif. When you're working with motif, as opposed to, so if you're a representational painter, if you're painting figures, you can make the figures really large in the field. You can make the figures really small in the field, close to the picture plane, far away from the picture plane. You can paint groups, you can paint portraits. If you're working with motif, it tends to have a sweet spot in terms of the part to whole relationship, the size of whatever module you're using compared to the size of the whole. And generally speaking, you can't really deviate from that very much and have the painting succeed. And so the danger there is if you're working with one motif and that motif tends to have a fixed part to whole relationship in terms of scale, you can wind up making the same painting over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's something that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think the glue, I mentioned this at the very beginning. I think the common theme with my work is not so much an approach to motif, but an approach to color.
And Joseph Barbaccia asked a question earlier kind of related to that. He says, any work created on other than a rectangle, which I guess goes toward this kind of part to whole and scale sort of thing?
No, never do it. The portable rectangle is my thing. I remember one, and I've never done a tondo or anything like that. And one time I did a square painting that I hung in a little group show as a diamond shape, but I decided that was even too much. I want them to be real pictures. I feel like when you get into shaped canvases, things begin to turn into objects. I'm a picture maker for sure. It's all about that fictive space. There's no objecthood in my work.
Yeah. Like the opposite of an Elizabeth Murray on some level.
Absolutely, yeah. or that early, or Stella when he was doing the cutouts and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Just gonna move through a few others. Who do you like to look at? Who's your, who really influences you, like either then or now? Like, who's hot now for you?
So huge, my influences are so broad, and they go back to the Renaissance. I mean, particularly the Baroque. I love Baroque painting, Velázquez and Rubens, especially. The Sistine Chapel, one of the central achievements in the history of Western painting. I like certain of the romantics, Delacroix. I'm kind of just moving forward in history. Jericho, obviously Impressionism and Post-Impressionism is really, I think of as the beginning of the lineage that I belong to. But Manet, somebody asked me recently, who is the historical personage that you would like to be able to spend an hour with to ask questions? It would probably be Manet. Huh. Cezanne, early Cubism, Picasso in patches. Picasso's got some great stuff and some less great stuff. The New York School generally, Pollock and Newman and Rothko. The op painters, obviously a strong touchstone. Bridget Riley is one of my heroes. Contemporary painting, there's a lot. My good friend Rob Diata. Sculpture, my friend Jim Osmond's out in the audience.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually own paintings from a lot of the contemporary painters that I like. Not because I'm a rich man, but because when I moved out of my last studio in Sunset Park in 2019, I didn't want to tote, generally speaking, your dealer is only really interested in showing work from the last 3 or 4 years. And I had this whole backlog, and I didn't want to move 1 million old paintings into my new studio. So I contacted a ton of artists, some I knew and some that I didn't know, and said, hey, I'm Paul Corio, do you want to do a trade with me? And everybody said yes.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome.
All the paintings, you see all the paintings behind me, and the whole apartment is like this. So my collection grew exponentially that year. It was a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I still do trades. I'm actually running out of wall space. I have a few things I have to find spots for.
Yeah, well, I could think of a couple people that might be opening to trading with you, but we'll talk about that later. That's brilliant. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with this idea of going into artists' homes. You know, like some of our friends have told us, God, you got a really weird house. Like you got like weird things.
Yeah.
But I like to see what creative people collect. That's my thing. Like, when you and I got on a little while ago, Paul, and you and I have been in Zoom meetings before, but I'm seeing your LCW chair in the background and these really interesting nested pieces of bent plywood, which it perfectly reflects that painting above it. So your sensibilities around your place, from what I can see, seem to match up really nicely.
Thank you. I do have a fetish for bent plywood, and I'm a chair junkie.
Ooh. Yeah.
If I had a really gigantic apartment, it would be like a chairgasm.
Wow. All right. So I think I have a chair for you. We'll talk about that later too. I might have a chair for you. So I have a couple of old Vasily chairs that need to be restrung, or re-leathered. So and they're real. They're Knowles.
Nice.
Yeah, they're good ones. I just don't have the patience for it. Glenn Lavertu is saying, I might have to do a good work of art first, though. Oh, he's referring to doing a trade with you. Come on, Glenn, that's not fair. All right, let's keep rolling. Here. Do we have any questions that need to be addressed in the chat there as I plug away at a few things?
I think we're caught up there.
But... Oh, it sounded like you were going to lead into something. No, okay, my bad. You hate it when I do that. I do this thing to Terri all the time, and you guys have probably all seen this out there, where I turn and I say, "Did you have something to say?" And then later I get in trouble for it because I'm just trying to share the platform.
Sure.
I tend to get excited. I apologize.
Well, here's a question for you: if you ever find yourself getting stuck, like in the studio, what do you do to get unstuck?
That's a really good question. And, by extension, the thing that fits into that same category is, like in the fall, I had an incredibly heavy teaching schedule and didn't allow me to get into the studio nearly as much as I want. So either if A, I'm stuck, or B, I've been out for a couple of weeks and I need to get started again, what I'll always do is something that I know will work. And as I said, I often return to old motifs. So I'll take something out of the back catalog that I know that if I make a painting this big, it's going to work out. And that'll just kind of get things rolling again.
Gotcha. That's actually a good thing to throw in the chat if you're watching. If you're creative, what do you do to get unstuck? Because I think
Yeah.
relating all these things to each other is actually really important. Paul, I'm going to break into some of the new work that you sent me, so we can kind of start to look at that, because I think we're getting down to the wire in time. But you have some pieces that are sort of situated in the studio.
Yeah.
Are those currently in process?
No, these are done. This is work I'm actually really excited about. Well, this is going to be, I'm doing a two-person show at a gallery in Santa Fe called White Light Contemporary. The other person being my friend Rob Diata, excellent painter. And I made 6 paintings in this sort of mountain motif, different approaches to this mountain motif, and that's going to be my contribution.
Oh,
That sounds
nice.
fantastic. We had some artists on from New Mexico a couple weeks
A couple
ago.
weeks ago.
We'll have to get them to go out and see your
Yeah,
show.
we'll
Are you
have
going to
to
be
know
out there
when
for
your
it? You
show
going to it?
is.
Hey, I'm going to go. I'm just going for the weekend.
Oh, nice.
When is
This is also going to be in the Santa Fe show.
Okay. When is that, if you don't mind me asking?
June. Wait,
June.
I'm looking up my calendar. I believe it opens the second Saturday
So
in,
that's pretty soon.
yeah, June 11th. June 11th.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
So if you're in the Santa Fe area on June 11th,
Great.
come out to White Contemporary.
Great. I'm noticing I'm seeing your numbered jars on the floor there below the
Oh, yeah,
painting.
yeah. Those are the jars that I was talking about. They're actually not on the floor there. I have shelves built specifically for them. And at any given time, there's 300 or 400 colors in my studio. And then you finish some colors up and other colors dry up, and then you make new sequences. So the inventory of colors it's not programmatic, like I don't have this library of colors that I'm replenishing. I'm just constantly making new sequences and running out of colors from other sequences. So it's this evolving thing. The inventory is different all the time. But while I'm making a painting, I never mix new colors. I'm always using stuff from the jars
Right.
against the wall.
Thus the consistency in the way they translate. I have a process question for you, actually, that I'm curious about. So when you're masking these things out, how does the process of masking eliminate your ability to see certain parts while you're painting other parts? Like, what kind of a visual blockage does that create for you on
Yeah,
some
it's
level?
almost like a blind spot.
Huge. You don't know what it's going to look like until the tape comes off.
It's fantastic.
So, I have a lot of experience. I have an idea. And this goes back to the earlier question about does the work surprise you in the end? That's why it always surprises you. You don't know what it's going to look like until you peel off that tape. And it's not always a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So at that
This is going to be in Santa Fe as well.
At that point, when you don't have the pleasant surprise, does it always come off the canvas and go, or do you attempt to rework it?
Excellent question. And the answer is what I often do is turn it to the wall for a week or two, because sometimes it's so radically different than I thought it was going to be that I think it's bad, but I'm not looking at it on its own merits. So I'll just turn it to the wall and wait a week or two. I learned that when I was doing printmaking, because etchings always turn out completely different than I haven't done printmaking for years, but I always remember you pull it off the press and it has nothing to do with what the idea was in your head.
Right.
But if you stuck it in a drawer for a week or two and took it out again, it's like, oh, this is not so bad. Sometimes, however, you turn it back around from the wall and it's like, oh no, you were right, it does kind of stink. At that point, I might try and repaint and rework. I do work on top of old canvases. And sometimes that works out. As a matter of fact, sometimes some of those can turn out to be my favorite paintings, the ones that you really had to wrestle to the ground, that you wouldn't take no for an answer. You just kept going until it works. Yeah. Sometimes those are among my favorites. Other times you just have to cut bait. You just take it off the stretcher and toss it and restretch it.
Yeah, I once had an old professor tell me, after I repainted over a painting like 7 times, I hung it on the wall and he sat there for 3 whole minutes of silence, and then he said, I would throw this painting in the garbage. And he said, because you can see the influence of the paintings below. Right. And then I think he told a story about Diebenkorn, about how Diebenkorn would never allow a painting to be repainted over. He would always just toss it because the influence was always there as a driving force. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but
I mean, de Kooning painted over paintings. There's stories apparently about his dealers snatching paintings out of the studio because he would just repaint as long as it was there. So it can work both ways, as long as it doesn't get too crusty. That's what you have to be careful about. If you repaint a painting too many times, you can get a really crummy surface.
Yeah.
But if you keep the paint, particularly with acrylic, if you keep the paint application relatively thin, you can get away with overpainting things quite a lot.
Right, right. It's really incredible the way some of these diffusions kind of appear in these gradients.
I like that airbrush effect a lot. I don't use any airbrush. I just use highly disciplined color sequences. And I should also add that a really common question that I get is how long does it take me to make these things? And the fact is they don't take that long to make, but what takes me the longest is mixing paint. Like sometimes if I'm making a new color sequence, I'll mix paint for 2 weeks or more before I use it to make a painting.
Oh, wow.
I get the colors right. I don't get them approximately right. And the way that you can get these kind of surprising airbrush effects, even though you're using discrete sequences of colors, is that the intervals have to be really, really right. And I obsess over that, and I'm just stirring and adding one drop and stirring and testing and adding one drop. It's a very laborious. When I decide to make a new sequence of colors, it's a real commitment. And it's all I'll do for a couple of weeks.
But then you have to really carefully control your lighting situations. And do you do tests?
And I do.
Do you do tests where you paint them out to see how they dry?
Yes, I do. I do all that stuff. That's why it takes so long.
That's incredible.
Yeah. These are among the newest works, and these are the ones I'm really excited about. I had a friend. When I moved from Sunset Park to East Williamsburg, when I changed studios, I moved into a much smaller studio. The price of studio space, as all the artists in the audience know, the price of studio space in Brooklyn is very, very expensive. So I downsized, and I found I got into the habit of making these kind of smaller works. 36, 24, 40, 30, that kind of size. And I had this friend is a collector that owns some of my work. And he's a very gruff guy. He's like, you can't keep making these small paintings. You can't keep making these small paintings. You got to make some big paintings. And it's like, I don't want to make big paintings until I have a show coming up because they just wind up in storage. That doesn't matter. You got to make them. You got to make them. And I thought about it for just a minute and I realized he was right. You have to make that leap. You can't worry about where you're going to put them or are they going to wind up rolled up. If you want to be a serious painter, you got to go ahead and make the big painting. So in 2022, these are not gigantic. These are about 6 feet, but I'm getting back into some large scale and tentatively looking at a solo show in New York in October. And these are going to be some of the linchpins of that show.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful. This one at first, I'm really excited about this painting. At first glance, it almost appears to fall into the category of that earlier one we talked about where it didn't really seem to have that dimensionality. But then I allow my gaze to shift a little bit. And I look at the way some of the different values interact with the more saturated tones. And I see these dimensional shafts running down in on an angular sort of fashion. And it's really quite a fascinating piece because it flattens out and then it drops back in again. So optically, it does something really interesting.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I like these a lot. The way I paint this one is it's built out of zigzags, and I paint each zigzag individually. And so I kind of think of it, I think there's a total of like 18 zigzags. So it's kind of like 18 interlocking paintings. And I try and get from, obviously it goes from dark on the top to light on the bottom. That's the consistent thing from zigzag to zigzag. But I try and get there in a completely different way within each descent.
Gotcha.
And based on my inventory of color sequences that I described earlier.
Right. Yeah. And I can see areas where that becomes familiar from looking at other paintings. And then I see areas where it almost appears to be new. Like there's this really nice blue, green, red combo thing that's happening middle right, descending, and it kind of darkens as it goes down. That one's new to me. But some of the other colors that you referred to as fire colors are also present in here. But Joseph Barbaccia mentions earlier, he goes, to get unstuck, I usually reimagine older work in different media. And then Mike Rader is saying, I can see the post-impressionism here, color mixing in the eye. Does the pixel come into consideration?
Absolutely, yes. I didn't, and also the 8-bit video game, like that plays a strong role in all this. And those things I think go hand in glove with the post-impressionist thing. Just because they all, the common theme to all that is color mixing in the retina as opposed to color mixing physically on the canvas.
Yeah, The 8-bit video game thing came to mind earlier, and I was like, don't bring that in here. But I'm really glad.
No, you can. I remember when I'm old enough to remember when Space Invaders was a new thing.
Me too.
I liked it a
Me
lot.
too.
I did too.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we used to sit in my friend's bedroom. We would listen to Blondie on a 45, and we would play Space Invaders on an Atari 2600. So, I mean, that was
anxiety.
that was a good time.
Yeah.
Heaven on Earth.
Say again?
Heaven on Earth.
Yeah, definitely Heaven on Earth. Oh, wait, there's more questions coming in. Joseph Costranova says, to get unstuck, I take out older, uncompleted work and complete it by reworking into a new piece. Mike Rader says, love 8-bit music. Now, that's an interesting connection there. Is that something you're into or ever thought about?
Not much. No, it's not. It's not that I like or dislike it. I'm just not conversant.
Gotcha. Oh, and here John Park's asking a similar question. Have you ever listened to the post 8-bit music style called chiptune?
Chiptune. No, but I'm writing it down right now. Chiptune.
Yeah,
We'll advise.
John's going to be a really excellent resource for music, and at some point I'm going to have John give me a photograph of his collection of synthesizers, his synth lab.
Oh, wow.
Which will just like that's gonna blow your. It blew my mind when I saw it. So, that's definitely something. So this one now brings in a new linearity that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
What's
and
going
it's
on?
somehow, I feel like it relates back a little bit to my illustration work. And I was also thinking about older, cheaper, off-register printing, something that Warhol made a lot of use of. 4-color printing done in the old days, pre-digital days. Quite often the registration was poor. And so I was kind of referencing that, the lines, it's obviously the same design as the underlying motif, but it doesn't sync up well. And it creates, it's a different take on transparency, and it sets up a certain kind of a space that's sort of novel in my work. It's a space I haven't used before.
Yes.
Yeah, and then of course the black is that registration ketone that's laid on top to kind of tie it all together.
But I always use a color that functions as black, but it's always got a chroma. Like it's either a really, really dark red or a really, really dark blue. At first glance it looks like black, but it's always got a color identity. And it changes, if I do the same painting with the same underlying colors, but use a dark red in one and a dark blue with another, it changes. The difference is surprisingly dramatic, not just aesthetically, but spatially.
Yeah. And I have a feeling I'm making a mistake when I ask this question, but as a painter, as a sculptor who's an occasional painter, I have a favorite chromatic black that I mix that I find to be effective. Do you have one, or for you, is it dependent on what you're working with?
Yeah, the only time I actually use black is when I'm doing those grayscale paintings. Anything like this, I'm always mixing a really, really dark color, and the really, really dark color tends to hue toward either red or blue.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if there was a secret formula that you particularly loved. I mean,
but in terms of the grayscale paintings, when I just use black, and I also use, this is another thing that a lot of the painters might gasp at. I use black as a mixing color. I know a lot of painters are, that's anathema to a lot of painters.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, no, I use it all the time. And the people that I studied with use it all. Sandy Wormfeld was one of my teachers at Hunter, and he has to be one of the great living authorities on color theory.
Yeah.
And he freely used black as a mixing color.
And if he says it must be okay. Although one of my favorites, I have to say, I like Payne's Gray, which does have, I like Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson together. But there's black in that.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Anyway. Well, Paul, we are getting down to the wire here in terms of our time. I just want to jump right on this last one here before we go. So is everything I've shown going to Santa Fe, or was it just the mountain ranges?
Yeah, just those mountain. I did 6 of those mountain motif paintings, and most of the last ones you showed will, we haven't done a final edit, and as I say, I haven't got the date yet, but everything after those mountain motifs may or may not be in my next solo at Mackenzie Fine Art, which is hopefully going to be this coming fall and probably in October.
Gotcha. Jamie Foster Artist is asking a question that I think is interesting. Have you ever jumped on one of your finished structural works and painted freestyle abstract?
There's one painting. I should have thrown a slide in. It's up on my Instagram. There's one painting where I used this particular motif and my usual approach to color, but rather than taping the design inside each of the tilted squares and the diamonds, I actually applied the paint in a gestural way.
Ah,
And
I think I saw that.
I've never, yeah, I've only have one painting like that, and I intend to make more, and I've never shown it. You can, if you scroll through my Instagram, you can find it.
Yeah, and I just popped that Instagram up on the screen. So if you want to check Paul out on Instagram, you want to go to, he's at paul.corio on Instagram. So definitely get there and follow him. And then I also put his website up a second ago. I'll put it up again. It's paulcorio.com. Definitely. And by the way, if anybody's thinking about structuring a new website for their artwork, go look at his website.
Oh my gosh.
Because when you pull that up, it is basically just the biggest grid of paintings you've ever seen. It will make you feel at once awestruck and completely inadequate.
And overwhelmed. Quite overwhelmed.
It's a fantastic thing to see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much for this tonight. This was really a treat. I mean, we had the best time.
It was my pleasure.
I love looking at your work, man.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, really great.
So listen, keep us abreast of any shows, especially that solo show if and when it happens in New York. We'd love to hear about that. And we'll talk to you soon, all right?
Great, man.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Thanks so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. We are back here. I'm going to put on, should I put on the closing music?
You can put on the closing music.
I will do that.
And the credits.
Yes.
Roll the credits.
Yeah, I know. Roll credits.
I'm good with that.
Oh, credits aren't working.
Oh, never mind.
So, anyway, good show tonight.
Good show.
This was good. All right, hold on. Let me find these things here. So, we've got some credits rolling now.
Ooh, there we go.
There we go. And what do we got coming up in the future?
Next week we have
Frederick Hayes. And
then Susan Stillman
and
will
Susan
be joining
Stillman.
us in
I am
2
so
weeks.
excited to talk to Fred Hayes.
Yeah.
First of all, I've been dying to get to somebody who works across disciplines. And not that we haven't done that. We have done that. You know, we've seen like Glenn Levertu, for example, working across 2- and 3-dimensional media. Hi, Glenn. But in Fred's case, I'm really excited to see there's an expanse between the work. There's a significant difference between what's 3D and what's 2D, and I love that variety in that work. So next week's show with Fred is going to be fantastic. Then past that, we're going to be talking to Susan Stillman.
That's correct.
And then we're at Matheny.
Yes, we're going to be at Matheny Arts Access.
Can you tell everybody about that real quick before we go?
Sure. Matheny Hospital and Education Centers in Peapack, Gladstone, New Jersey, and they have a big focus on the arts program there, which is known as Matheny Arts Access. And they use artists to facilitate art making for people with intellectual disabilities. So the artist actually becomes the tool. So it's a really cool process. There's beautiful artwork made that's actually up for sale. But they're going to talk to us a little bit about their process and some of the programs that they offer. And they do this in other disciplines too. It's not strictly visual arts. They have dancers that take on the role of the patient. They have poetry and they have plays. It's a beautiful facility. So we're really excited to be talking to them.
The very concept of arts access, where artists are employed to function as the conduit for the making for someone who otherwise cannot, is a beautiful and brilliant thing. And the way that they do it, the artists themselves, meaning the patients themselves, they express a satisfaction with what's going on. So it is a successful endeavor. And when you see what's done, it's really fantastic.
Yeah,
so we're going to actually be going to that place, filming, and then bringing that footage back here, and then hopefully talking live to people from there on the show. That's going to be a really great episode. Looking forward to that. Yeah. So let's see, who do we got? Oh, so Sculptore, Jim Osmond says, great show, and Fred will be great. Thank you for that, Jim. John Park says, love tonight's show. Ben says, amazing work, Paul. Thanks so much. Gia is here. Hi, Gia. Thanks for coming. Gia and Shannon both. Shannon, thanks for moderating tonight. Great work, great show. Ben Hagenbush, TNT, Dynamite Show.
Thank you.
Jess Park, excellent show. Thanks to all of you. We really enjoyed talking to Paul.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a great show.
All right, everybody. Until next week, have a great week. Enjoy the weather that's out there.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the world won't come to an end before we see you next week.
Yeah. It won't.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Take care.
Cheers.